call to order and roll call members Judy. 7 o'clock. Number 2, board to recognize students. Cherokee Girls 2A state qualifying cross country team.
Well, I'm not Coach Britt, obviously, and she couldn't be here because they are in Palm Creek in an elementary basketball game. But she did type up something, and so I'm going to read that, and if the cross-country girls will stand, please. Recognize them. Coach Britt says these girls are a very special group of young ladies. Cross-country is not an easy sport. They begin practicing in July, and when school starts, they practice every morning at 6:30 a.m. It's a sport of mental and physical toughness, and these girls definitely showed that this year. This team ran with only 5 runners this year to place 9th in the state as a team. That's significant because in Class 2A, there are 275 schools in that class. She said she is very proud of them all for their accomplishments in this sport. Abby Guffey placed 9th overall in state as an individual, and by finishing in the top 10, she's automatically an all-stater in the sport of cross-country. And that 9th place finish was out of 147 runners at the state meet at Edmond Santa Fe. Coach Pruitt said she would also like to thank the board for recognizing the hard work and tremendous accomplishments of this team this season. So we're just very proud of these girls, and Marianne Heim, who is also on that team, and she's not here, but May Nevels, Abby Guffey, Carson Schombacher, and Raylan Levy, and they all ran this year all season long. So cross country is a growing sport in Oklahoma, and we've been very competitive in it for several years, and these girls did a great job. So congratulations, and I'm sure you're excited about next year already. Thank you.
And B, Cherokee 4A 1X state championship cast and crew.
I didn't prepare remarks. I can borrow Kirsten's. I'll just. This is our state championship 1X crew. This is the 3rd year in a row they've won. For Gabe, who started his 8th grade year, it's his 4th state championship. They're a pretty incredible group. They've worked hard, really all year, but as soon as school starts, we just kind of move into the theater and don't move out until the show's over, which is this year, November 20th, and you all are invited. You get tickets. I forgot to bring them, but I can send them down after in a little bit, because you're both person. Pay my salary, so you get to go. But it's a really good show. I'm very proud of it. It's really hard. It's always really hard, but this one in particular is really difficult. And they're just outstanding. They also won the Tech Theater Award because it's a hard technical show to do, and they pulled it off. We had some issues at state a little bit, but people seemed not to notice. We noticed. But it went really well. So they are. So we have Caden Harmon. He runs our lights. Xander Jackson, he is a sophomore and a new all-stater. So the way that works is the judges pick the top 10 to 12 actors, it depends each year, but the top 10 to 12 actors every year in the whole, from all the schools who participate. There are 9 at state, 9 placed at state. So Xander's an all-stater. Chandler Colvin, also an all-stater. Draven Lear, Gabe Wyatt, an all-stater. Avery Sanborn, Evan Mitchell, also an all-stater. Aaron Tidwell, naming them in front of people. I barely know them, I don't care. Josie Shelton and Landon Colvin, who runs our lights. And they're just extraordinary kids, and it was a tough year this year. So it's a new facility. It's like a $25 million facility. I have the blueprints for our next bond issue. So, but it's a really cool place. But when we got there, what we understood from the diagram was not what we found there. Everything was different in terms of placement and the size. The lighting was different. So we had to, we spent like 5 hours after our tech rehearsal. Everybody gets time on stage the day before. Reworking a lot of our show because it wasn't going to work in the space the way we thought it would. So Gabe and Xander were supposed to come back for the football game, and immediately after we were finished, we went out to the lobby and we just sort of sat there and were very stressed because it wasn't going to work at all, the show, because we had to rework everything. And so eventually I kept looking at Gabe to see, when are you leaving, Gabe? When are you leaving, Gabe? And he just like was sweating, and Nikki was sweating. Everybody's sweating. And finally, we just had to have this conversation, and I'm like, hey, this has to be your call. Like, you go to the game, great. You stay here, great. And so he made a really difficult decision to call his coach and say, I need to stay here for this team because we're in big trouble. And Coach Schombacher was incredible about that. When Gabe came to me, like, this was a very tense situation. And when he came to me, I said, how was he? Because I'm like, I don't want to see him. like I said, how was he? And he said he was okay. And then he said, actually, he was incredible. And I think that's a testament to just the team that we have here at Cherokee. And I also think Bryce and I teach the same thing. He uses football and I use theater, but we're trying to teach them how to be like upstanding human beings, right? Good people. And that decision was a difficult adult decision. And in that moment, we had done our jobs. And I couldn't be prouder of Gabe or of any of the kids or of, Cherokee. So it was good. And now we have to go get ready for the community performance. So thanks.
Awesome. You guys did a great job. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. Get ready to laugh. So I think that's something we all needed after the last year and a half or however long. So it's perfect. You guys did an excellent job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, number 3.
Guys, if you would like to, I'm not telling you you have to, but it's okay if you want to get up and go.
Good job, everyone.
Oh,
Thank you.
Not you.
Oh, I think it's a good comparison.
Saturday.
Number 3, approval of consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at board meetings will be approved by one vote unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. The consent agenda consists of a discussion, consideration, and the approval of the following. A, minutes of the October 12th, 2021 regular board meeting. Anybody have any questions?
I need you to pull it.
Pull it.
Just the minutes, the other part, we can vote on.
Pull it, I think so.
Well, move it and do it separately.
Oh, okay. So we're doing it separately?
Please.
Okay. Voting that separately, so then the other ones do it individually?
You can do it as a whole, whatever you so choose.
Yeah. General, okay. We're gonna hold that one. B, general fund encumbrances, purchase orders, balances, and warrants.
If you guys want to look at your list that Judy usually provides there are a few that I would like to go ahead and point out and mention that are not normal monthly expenses. Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, $11,819. Those are unemployment costs because of the cuts that we made last spring. We knew that there was going to be some of those costs, so not sure what the rest of the year might look like as far as those go, but that's a pretty significant one there. And then down at the bottom, Thompson School Book Depository, that's textbooks, $14,261. Those are science textbooks. We ordered those, I think, back in May. It's just taken so long to get some of those things in, so we're just now getting those in, so we're just now getting the invoices. That's why that's just now showing up. The rest of the things on the list really are very comparable to last year, with the exception of fuel costs, which fuel prices are higher. So not necessarily that we're just going and doing more, but fuel costs have gone up, so that is a little bit higher this month compared to last year at this time. The city bill, I looked it up, last year it was about the same, so even with some of the changes with the rates and the meters, that's changed over, and we do have all those meters switched out that we talked about doing. Haven't had any issues after doing that, so I think that's gonna work out well for us. Those are kind of the main ones. We did have, again, down there at the bottom, you'll see a couple invoices to some former employees that were here last year that are not, and those are just insurance reimbursement claims that we had to take care of because of late payments in the summer, them starting new jobs in another district. And so there was just some paperwork and things that had to go on there that, through the state in reimbursing, just had to clean up some of the clerical things with it. Copy paper, that's another pretty big one, about $3,600. And we've kind of addressed that internally, how to cut down on some usage there, but when we do order it, we order a lot. So we don't order that very often. Are there any questions about any of those things that I mentioned or anything else?
I'm just saying, I need to know on that one separate. The first one.
So that means you're gonna go on to the next or the
I can go on to the next ones.
building fund.
Building fund, there really are not any significant purchases other than we did have to fix a broken window, had a rock hit it with the mower, I believe, so $482 there to fix that window. And then the $825 is what it costs us to switch the meters out, which, like I said, doing that, I think in 2 months we more than paid for that adjustment. So other than that, the monthly spraying fees in the building fund and our payroll amounts in the building fund, there wasn't really any other activity there. And then child nutrition, payments to Keystone Food Services, that and payroll is the only thing that came out for child nutrition. If I can move down to E. So several months ago, we had a coaches meeting and we were discussing fundraisers and different things that we could try to do. And what we're trying to do with our activity account is really get a much better idea of what our individual activities are costing us, the money that's coming in, and trying to get away from using the general athletics to do specific equipment purchases. And so if we can make those purchases out of those sub-accounts for those sports, it will help us kind of track that a little bit better and detail it. So one thing that we talked about was like, for football, the money would be spent out of general athletics a lot of times, but we decided that if we could take gate from homecoming every year and know that the gate money minus the cost of officials would go into the sub-account for football, and then like for basketball, boys and girls will do that for homecoming night and senior night, and then split that same way that it would be 50-50 between the girls team and the boys team, go into those accounts there. And then we've talked about, because all of our expenses cross country, they bring in a lot of money with entry fees for that. Cross country meet, track does the same thing for their track meets. And then kind of working with Coach Pruitt and Coach Tonette on some possibilities, what we could do for softball and baseball, because those are non-revenue sports. They don't bring in any money, gate money. And so we're trying to come up with possibility of hosting a tournament or a festival, something that we could do to try to generate some revenue in those sports and do something similar there as well. But the budget right now for our activity account allows us to do this, so we're going to see if by doing this it'll help out. And if not, account, and it's something we don't have to do every year. So that's what, in the activity fund E, that's what that transfer is, from athletics to football for that sub-account. It won't just be for football, we'll be doing that for those other sports as well. And then F, I don't have anything unless Samantha, if you have anything, I'll mention, I'll kind of get everybody up to speed, kind of where gross production is in my superintendent report later. And I don't have any fundraiser requests this month that were submitted.
So we have questions, B through G.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items B through E.
So we have a motion for consent agenda items B through G. Do I have a second?
Second.
Shin, second.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll move, I'll go back to A, and then vote on that, that's all.
I feel like you'd have to do that on next month's agenda since he's not a quorum without her.
Gotcha.
If she's
And then
abstaining.
Yes.
Gotcha, I got you. So we're gonna
Table it.
table that, that's what I was looking for. Tabling. Okay, number 4, proposed executive session to discuss the employment, hiring, appointment, demotion, promotion, disciplining, or resignation of any salaried employee or volunteer of the school district pursuant to OS 25-307B1. A, discussion and vote to convene into executive session.
Motion.
Andrews made a motion to convene. I will second.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite.
Yes.
Discussion to acknowledge to return to open session.
Motion to return.
Andrews made a motion to return.
Second.
And second.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite.
Yes.
Time 7:55. D,
During executive session, we discussed the employment, hiring, appointment, demotion, promotion, disciplining, or resignation of any salaried employee or volunteer of the school district.
Number 5, discussion and vote to approve the 2022 board meeting dates, January 10th, February 7th, March 7th, April 4th, May 9th, June 6th, July 11th, August 8th, September 13th, October 10th, November 7th, and December the 5th.
Most of these are corresponding dates. They are all Mondays except for September 13th, and that's a Tuesday. There's always a couple football games on the 12th, and so we moved that date to Tuesday, but I really tried to look at the schedules. I know a lot of us have kids and activities, so try to do the best I can there and avoid some of those dates. Some of them are the second Monday, like July, just staying away from the 4th and those things.
Questions? Motion to approve. Any other motion? I'll second.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite.
Yes.
Number 6, discussion and vote to approve the surplus of the property located at 515 South Massachusetts as it is no longer a necessity for school operations.
This is the house right here across the street, and we were renting that property, but because of some stuff that was outside of our control, we are no longer doing that. And talking with auditor and attorneys, there's just a process that we have to go through if we want to sell property. And the first step in that process is to surplus that. I don't feel like that property is providing any benefit to us whatsoever. And I don't think that it's anything that we will be able to make any significant income off of. And I think it would be best at this time if we could surplus it and then start the process of getting an appraisal and bids so that we could sell that property. That money, I believe, once sold, the money would go into our building fund. That's where the purchase was made for the property, so that's where the money would go back into, and that would increase our building fund budget. But it will be a process. Like I said, this is just the first step, and I just don't think that it's necessary for the school to maintain that property any longer.
Motion to approve.
Second that.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite,
Yes.
Number 7, discussion and vote to approve or not to approve revisions to the Title I comparability policy.
We are being monitored for our federal programs, and so as part of this, reviewing several of our policies that we go through. One that I came across was our Title I comparability policy, and it's really just the language here. There's some things that need updated. I gave each of you a copy of that. I didn't put the revisions that we need to make, but our classroom aides do work throughout the grade school, but those are considered paraprofessionals, so we need to change that to paraprofessionals. And then it states that we have 2 principals, elementary, junior high principal for K through 9, and high school principal for grades 10 through 12, and that's not how we're set up. So we would change that to elementary principal pre-K through 5th, and a middle school, high school principal who oversees 6th through 12th grade. Like I said, that's really all we're doing there is just kind of updating some of the language in this policy so that this can be put into our monitoring tool.
Motion to approve revision to the Title I comparability policy.
McFerrin made a motion, I'll second.
Parker,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite.
Yes.
Number 8, discussion and vote to approve or not to approve the district's estimate of needs and budget for the 21-22 school year and fiscal year 2022.
Estimate of needs was received last month, but wasn't in time for October meeting, and so we need to formally approve this estimate of needs for our budget. I've given each of you a copy of our district budget guide that I put together. We won't go through every single page here, but on page 7, I put some of our enrollment history from 2014 to present. And if you look at that table, you can see in 2014, our elementary had 192 students. And then since that time, we've been up to 228 at the highest in 2015, and kind of remained pretty level for the last 3 or 4 years. And we're currently at 215 in the elementary. Middle school has increased during that time. We currently have 93 students. Our high school has remained, we have 105 now, and at the most was 117 in 2019. So our enrollment numbers really, when you look at that, are staying pretty steady. Our ADM, down at the bottom, weighted ADM, you can see that during that same period of time, that's increased a little bit, and that will go up with our enrollment. There are several other factors that play into that weighted ADM, and those kids can fall into several different categories, whether it be special education, gifted programs, if they're in a summer school program, and then our teacher index. If they're economically disadvantaged, there's all kinds of factors that play into that weighted ADM. So you can see that those have kind of increased over time, and our most recent one in June was 744.61. That weighted ADM is what is used in the state aid calculation formula, and right now, there's two parts to the formula. There's the top part and there's a bottom part. The top part takes into consideration our chargeables, and those are things like gross production, motor vehicle tax, our REA tax, our valuation is figured into that, and then they multiply what is put into the state aid formula by the State Department by your weighted ADM. Right now, that number is about 1.3 million for us. That's what it says that we would get from the state, but our chargeables add up to about 1.6 right now. And if gross production trends the way that I believe it will for the rest of the year, next year that number will be closer to 2 million. And so the difference in those, that's how far off we are from really receiving any kind of significant money from the state. So we are really off the formula, and I expect us to stay off the formula for quite some time because of gross production and our other chargeables. The bottom half has to do with salary aid incentive. It really doesn't have anything to do with salary, but there's other factors there as far as transportation. That goes into that number. Our valuation plays into that bottom half, and that's something that we've been working with the county treasurer and the county assessor, getting accurate valuations to the state auditor's office so that they can get accurate numbers to the State Department of Education, because we're a little behind in that information getting there, and our valuation is not as high as what it shows on the calculation sheet. It's not a lot different, but it is, and the difference is money that we should be getting paid to us from the state at the midterm adjustment, which would happen in January. But, and it's not just our county, but there's other counties that these tax protests haven't really been around for very long in the grand scheme of things, at a significant level that they are now. So what they're finding is that some of this information isn't getting to the state auditor very quickly or at all in some cases. And so when those evaluation numbers come in, they're almost a year behind. And so by that time, you know, you don't get money that maybe you would get a little bit sooner and can go into your budget. So like I said, we're trying to work with the county offices because there's a lot of paperwork that has to be filled out when these protests are going on. If it's taxes that are not collectible, there's forms they have to fill out, give to the state auditor, and then the state auditor recalculates our valuation, sends it to the State Department of Education so that they can recalculate state aid, and then hopefully, like I said, at midterm there would be an adjustment made, and we may see a little increase if our valuation has gone down very much, and it has. Our actual valuation right now is about 33 million, and what is on the state aid calculation sheet currently is 36. So that 3 million factors in, and when we've lost that, it's just the process of showing that. We need to try to get that sped up a little bit so that we can get money quicker during the school year and not after the fact. So that's kind of something that we're working on, but those are the main things that affect state aid. And like I said, we're not on the formula, so we're not going to get a significant amount of state aid. Our money is local money, and right now is going to be a lot of federal dollars. So what I've got for you here, starting on page 22 in this booklet, is a working budget. And like I said, we're going to approve the estimate of needs as our budget and our appropriations of what we can spend, but we need to develop a budget that is below that with no carryover. And the cuts that we've made, we're trying to be responsible. We need to build up a fund balance so that we don't have to pay non-payables and go through that process anymore, but it's going to take some time. There's a lot of things that have gone into where we are now financially, and in that I've kind of given some explanations over the last several years. Obviously the tax protests have had a huge effect on our budget. And this year, there's another $5 million that's being protested. So, you know, in the general fund alone, that's gonna equate to somewhere between $150 and maybe $200,000 that we may not get, that we should, according to our evaluation. And so this working budget will reflect those losses. If we just go off the estimate of needs, those numbers do not take into account tax protests. And those are figured at 90% of what we would collect if there were no protests going on at all. So we really can't go off of those numbers for our actual spending. So that's what this is. And that working budget for our general fund right now is $3,616,417.06. That takes into consideration all of our payroll, all of our open purchase orders, and there's just a little bit above that for some other expenses. We're not quite sure what our city bill might do after the first of the year when the other phase of that rate increase comes in. There's some things like that. Our substitute pay, depending on how many substitutes we have to have. Those are other things that can affect this budget, and it's not easy to plan for, and especially when we don't have any carryover, you kind of got to hit it, kind of try to hit it right on the money. So this is pretty conservative. There are some good things right now. Our gross production is up. We have already collected right at 99% of what the estimate of needs was projecting. So realistically, looking at other projections, I think the gross production will come in well above that. But you know, there's always some unexpected expenses that will come up throughout the year. I don't anticipate having to come back and do any major supplemental approvals to increase it. But as we get closer to the summer and we start developing our summer program, we're going to utilize our federal funds to fund those programs. And so once we know what those costs are going to look like, I will come back and propose some supplemental adjustments to the budget to reflect those costs. But those will be within our appropriations because this original budget is going to be below that. So any money that we come back and want to use for summer, it'll all be well within our appropriated amount, and it will be used, the federal dollars is what we'll use. Page 24 and 25 in this just kind of gives a breakdown of our revenue sources, all our federal allocations. This year, it's a little over $700,000, and that sounds like a whole lot, but just remember with our federal dollars, we have to spend that. We have to spend our local money that we have before we can claim those federal dollars and get reimbursed for that. So you still have to have that cash and money available before you can spend all of that. Our allocations and projections below that are all of those total up to about $3.4 million. Those are my projections. Some of those will go with the projections that are in the estimate of needs. Some of them are like gross production, where if it continues to stay where it is and project that out through the end of the year, I figured that at 90% of what I think it will project to, and not necessarily, because like I said, we're already at almost 100% of what the estimate of needs says we would have. So I think that will be much higher. Allocations, those are dedicated things that the state gives us. Foundation and salary incentive aid, that's that lower part of the formula that I was talking about a minute ago. Our FBA allowance, that's the health insurance cost. We have fewer employees this year. So the original allocation of $442,000 at the beginning of the year that's on the estimate of needs, that's not actually what we're going to bring in this year because of the number of employees is going to reduce. So I think that number is going to be closer to 302. So that kind of gives you an idea of all of those areas with federal dollars that are available. That doesn't mean that we will spend 100% of those, but we could. Over on page 25, that's just broken down by function, and that kind of gives you a better idea of kind of where those areas are that the budget and that money is going to. And so you can see that in instruction, there's a little over 2.1 million that will go there. Support services, 1.4. Operations is a little over 23,000. And then other outlays, that amount, that's some workman's comp insurance that initially gets, and I'm gonna ask Judy to step in here if I say this wrong, but initially that's where it is coded, and then later in the year it gets reallocated out to other areas. But this is where it is to start with, so that's why I put it there. So the actual working budget amount right now that I'm proposing is that 3.6 million. That leaves us $253,696.28 below our appropriations currently. If gross production would continue to go up, then our appropriations, we can ask for increases there if that's needed, and then along with the federal dollars that we'll use for the summer program and those things as we have those expenses. Those may be the things that we come back and ask for, but outside of any unforeseen costs, this right now with our payroll and other expenses, that 3.6 is kind of the goal that we're going for to try to spend. If the revenue comes in and we're able to use those federal funds the way that we'd like to use them, and that other revenue comes in, I mean, you can see that it's not, that budget, it's still pretty tight. There's just not going to be a lot of extra things. We're still trying to do some things here and there to save where we can. But I feel like this is being conservative, but we're still taking care of the kids that we've got right now. We've got these federal dollars and some programs coming up that I think we're all pretty excited about being able to use for those. Going through, I've done the same thing in our building fund and our child nutrition fund, broken that down and kind of given some proposals to what I think we will spend and what our appropriations are. And everything right now is below those numbers. So this is a pretty conservative budget overall. At the end, I've included our sinking fund levy information and where we're at on our bond schedule there. And we restructured that a little bit last year when we refinanced, extended that a little bit, and we're able to save some money there in our collections. But with the judgment that we had to do at the end of the year, that will affect it. And if these tax protests continue, we're going to have to make some decisions down the road on how we proceed with this bond schedule, whether we refinance it or if we have to consider increasing the levy to offset that negative fund balance. But those tax protests are nothing that we can control. I just hope that there's some legislation this session that might address some things and give us a little more stability there when it comes to those things. But if you have any questions about any of this, fire away.
Motion to approve our district estimate fees and budget for 21-22 school year and fiscal year 22.
I'll second.
Parker?
Yes.
Gibson?
Yes.
Willhite?
Yes.
Number 9, principals reports.
Okay, I'm going to read these. I've given you printed copies of those, but both Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Pruitt are ball games, watching the kids tonight. So I will start with the elementaries. There will be a literacy open house for Title I on Tuesday, November the 16th. Parents will be allowed to come into the classrooms and see all the great things that their children have been working on. She said that they just celebrated their October award winners, and those are for Academic Excellence Awards: Kenya Rodriguez, Carson Peterson, Hudson Hansel, Hayden Hansel, Jackson Puffenbarger, Caleb Hunter, Kaylee Eckert. Chief Awards: Crew Wall, Seven Smith, Clayton Ellerbeck, Kinley Peterson, Laney Stocking, Reuben Heim, and Aubrey Hughes. And she says to celebrate these students for their hard work and kindness, they'll be doing a cooking lesson on Wednesday where they will make Oreo ball turkeys. The Wrights family has been generous and donated coats to some of the students, and those came in the mail last week and they were delivered today. And our volunteer music teacher, Mrs. Ware, has been a joy to have at our school. She's worked with our students to prepare a Veterans Day program that will be this Thursday at 10 a.m. The Wrights family also sponsored the 3rd and 4th grade students to attend Gretchen and the Grudge, which is going to be presented by NWOSU's Theater Department on Wednesday. It's November 18th, but I believe that would be the 17th. And the last thing she said is that basketball is off to a great start. Both teams have won their first games last week at DCLA, and they are playing this week in the tournament at Palm Creek. That is the elementary principal report. High school, middle school, he has listed the students that we recognized at the beginning of the meeting, praises them. Drake Williams was the National Proficiency Award winner in ag sales, and I know Mr. Pruitt and I have talked about trying to get Drake here and maybe talk about that a little bit, but with his busy schedule it may be difficult to do. Cherokee Chiefs will play at Laverne in the first round of playoffs on Friday. That will be at 7. I think OSSA had it listed at 7:30, but it will be a 7 o'clock kickoff. And there will be some information because you have to buy tickets online through an app or pay a higher price at the gate is my understanding. So we'll try to get some information out on that as quickly as possible this week. Elementary and junior high basketball has started. This week is the Cherokee Junior High Tournament, and the Palm Creek tournament is going on for the elementary. And then next week is the Rick Brown Invitational Tournament here at Cherokee. So busy couple of weeks for those two groups. As basketball starts, Mr. Pruitt says he would like to remind everyone that sportsmanship is everyone's responsibility. And we are having a Veterans Day Assembly here in the auditorium on Thursday at 10 a.m. And that's it for the middle school, high school report.
Okay, the 10 superintendent's report.
I would like to mention that on November the 17th is a hearing at the courthouse that involves, it's not a, my understanding, it's not a tax protest hearing, it's a hearing to decide if there will be possible tax protests, but that's November the 17th at 1:30. And the last figures I have from the assessor's office is there's a little over $240,000 that is our school's part in this. And so I would encourage anybody that's available at that time to try to be there at the Alfalfa County Courthouse and take part of that, because as I've said before, these protests are really starting to affect all of us. Not just the schools. It's not something that we can just say it's going on and we go about our day. We're really going to have to start taking some action here and some active involvement in getting educated in how we can try to resolve these things. I've had one long meeting this morning, virtual meeting on the Safe Route to Schools project. It's been quite some time since we've heard anything about that. We have the 90% plans in hand, and those have been completed. We committed to 10% of that project several years ago. And so I've been exploring some options on what we can do to get that paid for. And so I'll continue working on that. Right now, there's some applications and things that have to be filled out and completed, but I'm taking that route, and it seems pretty promising right now. I think it'll be a good option for us. And hopefully next month I'll have some more information for you on that. But just working with the city to iron out some final details, and maybe, some possible alterations. Material costs have gone up significantly since that project first got started. So, with any project, there could be some changes made to that, but we will work closely together and try to come up with something good. But I think that's going to be a huge benefit to our kids and community if we can get that going. So it's just about finding a way to do it. Next month, I'm going to bring to you our transfer policy, and we'll discuss that. That is something that we do have to have in place by January. And so I've met with several other area superintendents, had several phone conversations, just trying to navigate what we have to do within those policies. We'll have to set some class limits, so I'll be meeting with Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Pruitt again, look at our current numbers, and just kind of, like I said, using those tools like here, looking in the past, try to see where our numbers, where we think they, could be, fluctuate here and there. One thing I wanted to mention on it is I think there's some misinformation that this has nothing to do with the OSSA's policies and regarding transfers and athletic eligibility. I think there's some confusion out there. So all of the OSSA transfer policies will stay in place. There shouldn't be any abuse of that through this. And in some of the samples, it's specifically mentioned that way. So just thought I'd mention that. I mentioned a little bit ago, gross production is up 50,000 from last year at this time, and we've already reached almost 100% of our estimate of needs projections in gross production. And right now, that's very good for us. And with the prices kind of maintaining and staying up there, that's why we expect those things to maintain throughout the end of the year, and that's going to be good. But it'll be something that we watch closely. But it is up and has kind of remained steady, so that's some good news. I met with student council again earlier this week. We discussed several things. Main topic was we discussed our cafeteria and menu items and options, kind of working with them and Keystone Food Service to try to do the best job we can. And we'll be sending out some surveys to our students and find out what things that they like and maybe the things that they don't like, and some different options and ideas that we can do there with them. So that was a good conversation. That's been something that I think has been very good, meeting with all of our student council once a month, and they're starting to kind of figure out it's okay to give ideas and feedback and actually talk. And so there's been some good conversations in those meetings, and I'm kind of looking forward to getting those going. We also talked about just some possible presentations and some speakers, some activities and things that they would like to see. Maybe if we can bring somebody in, or even sending them somewhere, and just some different initiatives that we can do within our student body, just to increase school spirit, try to work on our culture and promote more positivity. Next month, our meeting, I told them, would be focused on social media and how it affects them as students on a daily basis, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think those are conversations that we have to have, and they live in a much different world than we did when we were that age. And so I think we have to have those conversations and be open about it, and try to figure out, what we can do, what we are doing, and kind of where we can go with it from there. But it's been a pretty busy month. We've had lots of things going on, and basketball season's already going like crazy, so we're just gonna stay busy. I think that's it.
Number 11, new business.
There's no new business.
Number 12, adjournment. Amber made a motion.
I'll second
Jane second.
Parker,
it. Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Willhite,
Yes.
time.
8:29.